Hello, I am the gaming superhero, and today I am broadening my portfolio with a DC Rivals alternative. I know my man James is interested, so let's set some ground rules. I am matching Marvel's launch roster of 33 heroes, and I will also go over maps I would like to have in the game, ultimately totaling to 10, because that is what Marvel started with. Only I will make each based on a unique DC location instead of giving 3 to 1 location. And I don't just mean the control maps. I mean how 3 distinct different mode maps were given 1 location. I'm not doing that here. I will also detail a unique aspect, which is, simply put, the thing that sets this game apart from Overwatch and Marvel rivals, similar to how Marvel added destructible environments to make it different. Finally, to let you know how this video will go, I will not go into specifics on character kits, because this is the start of a series where I will go into detail on each character's kits in their own dedicated videos, alternating weekly with the regular Marvel Rivals concepts. Until I have done everyone in this roster, but I am willing to expand the series into even more DC characters if they were in this kind of game, but only if you guys really want it. So if the DC videos do super well, I will keep the series going with more characters, but that is entirely up to you. So, with the rules set, let's start with the unique aspect. Why you should care about this game, apart from every other hero shooter, and that is map synergies. Similar to team-ups, but map-specific. But there is also a general synergy with the maps tied to if the character is a villain or hero, which did heavily affect the roster to make it more even to give the whole synergy thing a purpose. But there are more specific character and map combos as well. Those will just be saved for the individual character kits. Okay. That felt a bit more like rule setting, so let's get to the juicy stuff. Who is going to be in the damn game? I've gone back and forth on how to go about this. Do I just go down the list from one role to the next, or alternate between them? But I think it would be more interesting to alternate, so the first hero is the reason I am doing this now, of all times. Superman, who is a tank, obviously. What would a DC crossover anything be without the Man of Steel? So, not much to say without going into kit things. Next is Starfire, our first duelist character, because yes, I am stealing Marvel's term for the damage character, because it is just a better term for this role. Damage is not a role, it is a general concept of game design. I chose Starfire because I think she's really cool, and a well-known character that would get people excited. It's not like a openly expected one like Superman or the Trinity, you know? It's definitely one that would light creative, get your mind going on who could be in the roster further if it were like, releasing and stuff. Cyborg is the first support we are going to discuss, and by discuss, I mean tell you he is in the support category in the launch roster of this hypothetical game, because I am not getting into specifics here. I will tell you, though, that I originally had him in the tank category, but ultimately made him switch with another character we will get to later. Also shows the benefits to this alternating strategy, because I get to have 2 Teen Titans right next to each other. Next, to show the issue with alternating, we have Wonder Woman as a tank. You would think I list the Trinity first to get them out of the way, but that goes against the alternating format, and ain't nobody above waiting their damn turn. You ain't special just because DC chose to focus on you more than others for an entirely arbitrary reason. This was a really bad tangent to go on for Wonder Woman of all characters. Of all 3 of the Trinity, she is the one that this applies to the least, and not the one I am talking about when I say any of that. But moving on. For our next duelist, and first what might be considered obscure character, is G.I. Robot. Yes, from Creature Commandos, despite only really being in 2 episodes and still being so many people's favorite character. So of course, I put him in the game. Plus, he is one of the few characters in DC who actually uses guns. You have no idea how few of the characters in DC use traditional firearms. Since this is a shooter, I gotta try to fit as many as possible. He is also our first technical villain character, as far as categorizing goes, for the map synergies, because I essentially listed them as who is okay with just killing a person to decide where they land, or rather would they openly fight a hero, which GI would absolutely do. if anyone told him said hero was a Nazi, he would fight them. He would try to kill them. If someone just told him Superman was a Nazi, he would try to fight Superman. He would try to kill Superman. He would fail, but he'd try. Which, that's gonna land him in the villain category, unfortunately. So, that's just kind of how the list needed to work. Adam is our next support. I don't know if he is an obscure character, because he still shows up in quite a few things, but I feel it is nothing too surprising, although it did take 2 Injustice games to include him, and even then he was one of the last DLC characters for that game. And don't ask me which Adam specifically, because I have not decided yet. Just the Adam. Pick one for now, although I'm probably gonna have to come up with one when the actual video needs to be made. Blue Beetle is our next tank, which might seem strange, but that's because you're thinking too much about how his physical build is depicted. But I can't be mad at you, given this is the character that switched with Cyborg, so I originally put him in support, but ultimately decided the tank role was better for him, due to his actual skill set and behavior. Green Lantern is a duelist, and is also the Jessica Cruz version. That's right, not Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart. Those losers have to share its show, while the GOAT Jessica gets her own to herself. So I'm adding her instead. Although I think that for a post-release idea, you could add the other Lanterns as different characters. So this doesn't entirely lock them out of the game entirely, but I think the base roster should be more of a curveball. Throw people off, get them excited for the DLC release of the other Lanterns, because the Lanterns are just a beneficial power that they can vary so wildly that you can just have all of them as separate characters entirely, which is very nice. Our next support is one that needs very little explanation. It is Zatana, the premier magic character of DC. And yeah, not much to say about this. It's a character that everyone loves, and her use of magic makes it easy to add to the support category. So, moving on to Metamorpho as the next tank. Again, someone who is showing up in the Superman movie and also fits in the tank role. Pretty obscure now, but definitely would be more well known after the movie comes out. Overall, a fun character inclusion, I think. Finally, we get our second villain in Ravager for another duelist, and this is a really obscure one, but she is Deathstroke's daughter, so essentially just female Deathstroke. I put this one as a Lin Lee Iron Fist equivalent, where it is a well-known character, but an unusual person in the role. Although, I'm not sure, a lot of you would say Jessica Cruz Green Lantern is more equivalent to that, but I don't, and it's my list. Next is a much more well-known DC character, Green Arrow for support. I imagine a very Trick Arrow-focused build to support the team rather than a Hanzo or Hawkeye clone, because I want to be more unique. And I had to put a main Justice League member in the support role, because you know what? Gotta encourage people to use that role. Okay, the next few are all villains, so be prepared. Lex Luthor is a tank. It's the character that kicks off this villain group, I guess. Obviously, he would be in his big mech suit to be in the tank class, and with that, there really isn't much more to say about it without going deeper into kit stuff. Same goes for the next duelist, Harley Quinn. A very expected choice with not a lot more to say, other than don't expect the Joker. He's not on this roster. Only one clown in this roster. Who better to follow that than with Poison Ivy as the next support character? I needed a plant-based character, and who else but the classic eco-terrorist herself? This is pretty much the last Bat-related character, because I really wanted to limit the amount of them in the game, because so many DC games that are supposed to have general rosters basically boil down to nothing but Batman-adjacent characters and common Justice League members. I wasn't going to do that here, so no more! Next tank is the Bride. Same as G.I. Robot, I put her in the villain category, which is arguable, but I stand by my reasoning. This is also the last character from Creature Commandos because I don't want too much recency bias, but you also want to tie in to what everyone is talking about for relevance. But I also wanted to have more than just Wonder Woman in the tank category, so let's hope I can think of a kit for her that fits the category, because this is one of many I have not actually thought about how to properly implement yet. Peacemaker for Duelist, a very expected choice given he has shown up everywhere since his show came out. Motherfucker made it into Mortal Kombat, for fuck's sake. You can bet he makes it into the next Injustice 2. So I put him on my hero shooter roster because he is popular and wields guns regularly, so it was a no-brainer. Star Sapphire for support. Number 6. I couldn't just have one Green Lantern character, and I chose Star because I felt like making everyone who wanted to shorten Starfire's name for callouts really stupid. Now you gotta use Fire for the shorthand, and even then it is indistinguishable from Sapphire. But in all seriousness, I felt she is one of the most underappreciated Green Lantern villains. Sinestro is everywhere, Atrocitus has been talked about a lot and showed up in Injustice 2 for like 3 seconds, but still it counts. While Star Sapphire is just Hal Jordan's Catwoman, that is disposable enough to not show up in any of the same media. So I'm giving her her flowers. Black Adam for the next tank. I originally had Shazam, or Captain Marvel in this slot, but I needed to balance out the hero-villain ratio, so I just swapped the two most swappable characters. They also tend to be very beefy and tough, so in the tank role he goes. Moving on. Ending our villain streak, we have Vixen for our next duelist. This was more of a choice of character I don't see a lot of, and I think could be really interesting in a game like this. This might also become apparent that I have a lot of female characters on this roster, and I don't really know how that happened. Every once in a while it would cross my mind to have more female characters. Other times it was just thinking of cool characters, and some of them were like Vixen or Zatana, where they were cool and I wanted them, but they happened to be female. With that not being the primary reason. I wasn't just like having a list of it needed to be perfectly even. Not all the time, or most of the time even. But hey, if it works out that way, I'm not mad. Like Ravager, for instance, wasn't trying to balance out the genders thing. I just thought it would be cool to have a Deathstroke-like character that wasn't Deathstroke himself. Because, I don't know, I like to be different. Wasn't so much I needed a female where a male slot initially was. Anyway, back to villains with Ratcatcher. Specifically Ratcatcher 2 from the Suicide Squad, but also from comics. I just used that one because it is the most widely known. This might also count for a Batman adjacent character, but I personally don't think of it that way because, for one, they are a C-list villain at best, and their most prominent role is now the Suicide Squad, not Batman. And being referenced in a Batman thing should no longer tie a character to him, given he is the only one who gets shows, or movies, or games at all, so there isn't exactly anything else to be referenced in, at least not yet. Next is my big, complete unknown pick, a character I pulled from the annals of DC history, like Squirrel Girl or Jeff the Shark, except probably even more obscure than that for the people watching this video. A tank named the Blue Snowman, Wonder Woman's ice villain archetype. Every self-respecting DC hero has like a Mr. Freeze to Batman or Captain Cold to the Flash. They are also non-binary, so that's something Marvel Rivals doesn't have, so that makes this game better by default. Right? That's how that works, right? Next is the Flash. He is a duelist, and I've not quite figured out how to go about implementing him because the speedsters are a very tricky thing to get right. Marvel Rivals hasn't done a speedster yet, and Overwatch has no incentive to bother. And most importantly, I have not done it yet in my own concept videos. So this would be my base for the character type, and as such, making him a duelist was best because I can focus on making him feel right rather than forcing some sort of healing or tanking abilities into the kit. For the next support, I have Brainiac, the Superman or Justice League villain, depending on who you ask. The only Justice League villain if you consider him one. I have on the other roster because those seem like big build-up characters, but I think it's interesting to have at least one. He also fits so perfectly in the support role as a villain. I am running out of transitions from character to character. I really should have numbered this shit. Etrigan the Demon as a tank. You all know Etrigan, right? From the DCAU. The one that was a Middle Ages knight that betrayed all of Camelot for some tale and was cursed for it. Or at least, I think that's what happened. I didn't rewatch the episode recently. Next is Deadshot. He's a general sniper archetype that all hero shooters need. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find a sniper that also has Widow in their name, so this will have to do. I originally had Bloodsport here, but I didn't feel like wasting his potential by making him the basic sniper. but that is literally all Deadshot is, so he fits better. Next is the superhero Static Shock as a support. He almost didn't make it onto the roster, but I was unhappy with my last choice for this hero support slot and was brainstorming other options when Static came up, and it was perfect. So here he is, and he feels nice as a character that doesn't get much recognition, but is also super popular whenever anything DC comes out. And he's one of the first to be requested. Next tank is King Shark. He is a widely known big character that is super cool. Another pretty basic choice, but there is still plenty to be done with him for a kit that would be super fun. For our final duelist, we have the one and only Supergirl. That's right, I put both Superman and Girl on the launch roster. What can I say? I like Supergirl, and it helps with anyone who might be disappointed that Superman is a tank, because now they can also play with the kit of Superman if he was in the duelist category. This may also make Superman the character with the most reps on the launch roster, but it makes it difficult to count with the amount of characters that are just detached from any specific character franchise, which is honestly the best for a roster going for a full reflection of the DC universe. And also, I guess, unfortunate for one of my friends who said this should have gone to Crypto because you need a marketable plushie. I do not feel that strongly about it, so I just left Supergirl in. But I guess let me know if you think Crypto should have been here instead. Next is Cersei for support, another magic user that was easy to fit into support. I'm gonna be honest, filling the support category was really hard towards the end, as opposed to the tank role, which was fairly easy even after Superman and Wonder Woman. I feel I defaulted to magic users a bit too easily, but there are still plenty I didn't put in the category, although I also didn't put them in the game at all, which is unfortunate. Our final tank is Gorilla Grodd. That's right, I put the two big animal villains right next to each other on the tank roster. Grod is very much my favorite gorilla villain in the DC universe, which in any other fictional world wouldn't be impressive, but if you know DC, you know that is truly an honor. This was truly the only role he could fit in. And rounding out the roster, we have Mera for our final support and character for the DC Rivals roster. I did in fact choose Aquaman's wife over him. He is not here. I was very satisfied with the heroes I put in the tank category and wasn't willing to trade any of them out for Aquaman. And Meera does fit very nicely in this role as a waterbender and all. And with that, we have our starting roster for the DC equivalent to Marvel Rivals. All 33 of... Oh, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3... There are only 32 here. Whoever could I have possibly... It's Batman. I didn't say Batman. I saved him for the end because he is a requirement in any DC project, I guess. And I wanted to see how many people would actually notice, and not just autofill him in their brain. Failing that, get a bunch of comments for people asking where he is, and make people watch through the whole roster, because there are plenty of odd picks that would have gotten tuned out otherwise. He is also a duelist, just so you know. Another obvious choice, but he's Batman. There really isn't anything interesting you can do with him here. And with that, we have our starting roster for a very good selection, if I do say so myself. Yes, there are a lot of names you would expect that aren't here, but look at it this way. There are a number of characters I desperately wanted that aren't on this list, so it doesn't even fully please me. But that is what makes it perfect. Tough calls needed to be made to get a full look at the universe, while also showing love to characters that don't get a lot of attention. Because someone doesn't know how to share. I wouldn't be so hard on him if every recent Batman project outright refused to have any other characters in them, like the Batman and Caped Crusader teams. Both outright said they are never having other characters in them, including the Bat family. Never mind those aspects are the only things that keep Batman interesting anymore, given everything that can be done with him alone has already been done. Sure, why not also rip the ability for any character to get a measly cameo? Let's move on to the map before this rant gets any longer. First is Metropolis, which is a payload map. The payload being a truck containing illegal shit on it. Attacker spawn is the LexCorp building, because that is where the truck is from. You are transporting it to the Daily Planet to expose Luthor's criminal dealings. The first checkpoint is Star Labs because it's a notable enough point of interest. And checkpoint 2 is a grand Superman statue to honor the Man of Steel, and think massive. Like, just picture a statue in the middle of the city that would be big enough to justify it being a place the payload stops to stand in awe of. The final endpoint is, of course, the Daily Planet. If you're wondering why we don't take the payload to the police, it's because the police station doesn't have a cool-ass golden globe on top. For the hero benefit on this map, we have extra health packs hidden throughout the map. These aren't as effective as regular health packs, but they are nice. I rationalize this as Metropolis citizens giving the heroes a hand in the small ways they can. The villains, however, get destructibility, like in the Asgard maps and Rivals. Any villain character can just break shit to get rid of cover or high ground. It isn't fully destructible, you can't literally turn the map to a flat plane, but you can destroy quite a bit. Next is Arkham Asylum, not Gotham City. I'm leaving that available for DLC, but this is the most iconic part of the city anyway, so I think it's fine. Especially if we put it on an island like in the Arkham games. It is a payload capture map, meaning the attackers need to capture an objective before moving the payload. Think Central Park from Marvel Rivals, or King's Row from Overwatch. The story is the attackers are pulling a jailbreak, with the payload being an armored truck full of inmates to be brought to the exit. The defenders try to stop that, obviously. I think it would be interesting if the first capture point was the main cell block inside the asylum. You capture that and then move outside to move the vehicle down the first area, which would be the main courtyard for the asylum, through an inner gate into the second area, which would be the old part of the asylum that was left abandoned, ending at a dock to get the criminals away. The hero element for this map is the shadows. There are spots all throughout the map that if a hero character steps into them, they become invisible, similar to how the Moon Knight and Cloak and Dagger team-up works. So you too can make Superman lurk in the dark, plotting his next murder, just like Snyder. This was inspired by this being a Batman location and this being a thing he would do, so I just decided to extend it to the whole roster of heroes. The villains, on the other hand, get to shut doors. There are special high security doors all throughout the map that can close off flanks or angles that villains can close off. This sounds odd, but this is going back to the Arkham game influence, where the villains completely took over the place, so they have control of the doors. The doors will open automatically after a few seconds to keep them from being super broken. Next map is Themyscira. It is a push map like from Overwatch, where you push the payload back and forth. The payload is a cart full of Amazonian technology that is being fought over between the two sides, with the center of the map being the Colosseum. And on one side is Hippolyta's Palace, and the other side is the Healing Bathhouse, like from the first Wonder Woman movie. There are no NPCs, you little pervert, so don't even think about it. As for the hero and villain effects, for the heroes we have Athena's Blessing. Certain zones throughout the map will give hero characters damage reduction, while the villains get Ares' Boon. They get zones throughout the map that increase their movement speed. I want to avoid the specific side bonuses from just giving extra damage. I definitely want to keep it to support or cool extra pathways. There is an exception to this, which I will explain now because it is tied to the next map we are talking about, the Watchtower. The Justice League's fancy satellite headquarters. It is a control map, so the teams try to capture a single point on 3 separate locations in a best of 3. The first location is the rec center / cafeteria, so the area where the heroes just hang out and chill between missions. The second location is the training ground, so think gym equipment. The point itself would be sort of the boxing ring where the heroes spar each other, with the third location being the hangar with the jets and other vehicles the heroes use to get around. Nothing really crazy going on in these locations. Obviously, you'd want some fun details denoting the spaces being lived in. As for the aspects, we have a minor damage boost for the heroes, just in general, all over the map. And for the villains, we have nothing. That's right, just a flat damage boost for our heroes and nothing for the bad guys. This is meant to sort of be a base standard map to just go in without any super crazy gimmick, because even that damage boost is super small. Similar to the 5% boost anchors sometimes get with team-ups in Marvel Rivals. That's just there to give a feel of home court advantage. And don't worry, because I have another map to balance out the scales. The Hall of Doom. The evil mirror to the Watchtower. Well, technically the evil mirror to the Hall of Justice, but I like the Watchtower better. Maybe the Hall of Justice can be a DLC map. But for the Hall of Doom, it is also a control map. The first point is the armory, filled with all the weapons and doomsday devices you could ask for. A great opportunity for references galore. Second point is the command center, where they plan their evil schemes. Think a big screen with a world map on it, and a table with a bunch of chairs for the Legion to sit in and have their earnings report, or whatever they talk about. Another good opportunity for references people will interpret as teases of future content. The third point is the dungeon, with the torture equipment for getting information, and cells for holding the prisoners, and other dungeon stuff. I also want to point out the aesthetics of the two maps. One would be clean and bright, the other dark and gross. Even down to the windows, where in one you see outer space, and maybe even the Earth, on the hangar point of the Watchtower, while the Hall of Doom is set in a swamp. So the windows will either show just swampland, or even underwater as we go deeper into the facility, making for a fun juxtaposition. But, as I'm sure you've guessed, the aspect for this map is slight damage increase for villains and nothing for heroes, an inverse of the effect on the Watchtower. I felt it necessary to at least have one map to be a simple example of the game without a crazy gimmick, and then I made that map the Watchtower and thought it would be interesting to have a set of two that mirrored each other while staying simple. The next map is Atlantis, the home of Aquaman, or to reference someone actually on the roster, Mera. This is a payload map through the underwater city that is in a dome, similar to how Injustice portrays the city and not the movie that made it full underwater. The payload is a bomb being pushed through the city to destroy Aquaman. So the map ends at the Royal Palace. The starting point is the entrance to the city. The first checkpoint is a market full of weird fish and other Atlantean artifacts. The second checkpoint is the gate into the courtyard outside the palace, ending in the palace, as stated before. The special feature hero is really cool. I am very proud of it. For the heroes, we have points in the map that are geysers that will take them up to high ground, spots that can only be accessed by them, or if the character can fly, but if they can't, they need the geysers. For the villains, we have other points throughout the map that will take them down into an underwater zone where they can travel between points to secretly get around, or have a fight if two villains of opposing teams meet each other in it. These are mostly just two water-related things, thus, of course, they must go in the Atlantis map, but even still, I think these would be really cool and drastically change the map depending on who you pick. The next map I picked is the Green Lantern planet Oa, the greenest thing to ever green. It is a payload capture map. The attackers will first have to capture the point in an armory to collect a special weapon. So think of it more as a green evidence room because this is a weapon to be used against the lanterns. You then move it through the alien green streets of Oa, with the first checkpoint being the Foundry, where the Green Lantern rings are forged. Then, moving on to the final endpoint, is the main Green Lantern battery, because the special weapon is used to free Parallax, who is in some continuities contained within the main battery. So if the attackers win, he is freed, and if the defenders win, he is not. Similar to the plot on the Clintar maps from Marvel Rivals. As for the aspects, the heroes get special barriers throughout the map that they can shoot through, but villains can't. These barriers can't be walked through by anyone. The barriers will be green translucent. The villains will have certain zones throughout the map that they will gain armor that shows itself as bonus health. The armor will appear as yellow on the villains because I like to contextualize it as the Yellow Lanterns helping out, especially because I didn't put Sinestro on the roster. He can be there in spirit. Next, we have the Fortress of Solitude. That's right, a second Superman-related map. It is a payload map. The payload itself is an alien creature of some kind. Let's make it Starro, just for the fun of it. The attackers are trying to put him in Superman's special zoo where the defenders are trying to steal him for evil use. Ideally, the map will mostly look like a beautiful crystalline palace, and not a dark-ass box full of fallacies. The start of the map is the entrance, possibly making the attacker first spawn just the outside North Pole open air. I haven't really mentioned spawn rooms a lot, but just imagine some offshoots of the main points of interest I've mentioned unless I specify, because they usually aren't going to be that interesting in and of themselves, but more what is in them, and at that point it could be anything you want it to be. But back to the map. You move through the entryway of the fortress and move to the first checkpoint, which is the entrance to the vault, a room dedicated to the memorabilia of Superman's past. Think giant Penny and T-Rex in the Batcave, stuff like that. So we have the Bottle City of Kandor, the Phantom Zone projector, and the Supermobile. Because yes, even Superman had a special car despite absolutely not needing one. Just like Spider-Man or Sonic. The second checkpoint is the entrance into the actual zoo, allowing that to be an explorable area. Seeing a bunch of alien wildlife, and the actual final endpoint is just a space at the end of the zoo for Starro to stay. A fairly straightforward map, but a cool one nonetheless. I wanted to give the Fortress of Solitude some time to shine, given it is usually overshadowed by the you-know-who's you-know-where. But with that, let's get into the aspects for the heroes. We have automaton assistance. Every hero on the map gets an automaton that will help them move or stop the point, so it will move faster or slower depending on how many heroes there are, and becoming completely irrelevant if the number is equal. Now, an interesting point about this aspect is that the automatons can be shot and killed. They will return after a short duration, but if you want to move the cart faster, kill those defending automatons. The villains get secret passages that act as shortcuts throughout the map. This is inspired by how villains are always breaking into the fortress and making themselves at home. These appear as secret doors that open for villains and close for heroes. Maybe to really show the inspiration, have the opening of the walls be explosions and just breaking, and closing being the crystalline reforming, to show it as more of a break-in than just opening the door. Next map is Kahndaq, the homeland of Black Adam, a vaguely Middle Eastern or Egyptian nation that is functionally only ever one city, like Wakanda. It is a push map, with the cart being a magical statue that walks. The center/starting point for the map is in front of the palace. One side goes into the palace, the other checkpoint for this side is the ballroom within the palace. So, whatever a ballroom for a Middle Eastern/Egyptian palace would look like. The endpoint for this side is the throne in the palace. For the palace, we have the city, with the first checkpoint being the town center, where executions are held every Wednesday. Not a joke I made up, that is apparently a real thing Black Adam made law, if the wiki is to be believed. The final point is the archway, composed of two giant statues of men that appear in some images of the city/country. My primary idea for a plot for this would be that the statue contains some kind of power that one side is trying to return to the royal family and the other is trying to give to the people of Kahndaq. As for the hero aspect, we have zones that will stun villains within them, while the villains will get little bonus health packs similar to Metropolis for the heroes, because it is a villain city, so I thought it would be cool to have that, mirrored aspect. This map was really hard to make given the lack of any real points of interest. This city doesn't really show up a lot in anything, so this might end up being more of a map for the devs could do anything with, like Tokyo 2099 from Rivals. Finally, we have the last map, the Tower of Fate, because yes, I put the Tower of Fate in, but not the good doctor himself. And that has a good reason. He was on the roster before I came up with the whole villain-hero concept, and I needed more villains, and he unfortunately got cut. But I felt the tower was a cool and distinct location. I couldn't get rid of it, so let's treat it like it's a tease for the future Dr. Fate inclusion. It is a control map, so it has 3 different locations. The first is the scrying chamber, the portion of the tower with a bunch of divination equipment to gain all kinds of information. In Dr. Fate's case, apparently just monitoring all significant supernatural powers, where they are and what they are doing, mostly through mirrors. So imagine a bunch of mirrors showing images of places or characters as Easter eggs, maybe a Ouija board on a table. Next location is the library, a maze of books, all very powerful magic books. Maybe a few special pedestals for the really significant ones, like whatever the DC equivalent to the Darkhold is. Finally, the last one is the summit of the tower, a big room dedicated to the primary tools of Dr. Fate, like his helmet, for example, which acts as a good example of teasing the character. But also, given this is the top of the tower, the skybox could be really crazy in the astral plane. Also, the two locations in the tower would obviously take heavy inspiration from the Doctor Strange map in Rivals, given its heavy inspiration from MC Escher, which actually plays really cool. The hero aspect is portals, more like Krakoa, not the Sanctum Sanctorum, allowing heroes to travel around the map. The villains get walls they can walk through, and they can't shoot through them, but the hope is that this will be an equal time saver to the portals, but it'll probably have a, to cover a different niche. And that's it. We're done. The whole roster for a theoretical DC Rivals and maps that would be included. The maps were quite hard to figure out, given anything that isn't just a city is fairly unknown and underexplored in the comics. There were also a few times I really regretted the whole different hero and villain aspects for each map, but I think it was worth it in the end. But with that, I'd like to have a moment of silence for all the heroes and villains that didn't make the Not you clowns. You'll have your chance when you take up half the next Injustice roster. So, thank you everyone for getting this far in the video. It has been a long one, the longest one I've made, but I'm excited to start this brand new journey with all of you. And it will be a journey. I mathed it out. With the bi-weekly release schedule, the last character from this roster will have their video come out on October 9th, 2026. So be aware of that, and remember to really support these following videos if you want them to continue, to see a character that wasn't on the list. And let me know who from the list you are most excited to see. Because I haven't fully nailed down when I do who. I figured a few out, like for example, I mapped out the rest of this year, and 1 or 2 for next year around significant events, but there are still a lot of open slots, and you can determine. So, don't be shy. Next week is a Marvel concept, and then the following week, we start the long trek to fully develop this roster. On July 11th, I'm sure I'll have to make a lot of shoutouts for that one. Whoever will the first DC concept on that date be? Check out the other much shorter videos, my social medias, and most of all, my community Discord. And you're welcome, DC fans. And fuck you, Batman.